The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I will be your host for today's Nonprofit MBA podcast. For those of you who don't know me, I am the co-founder of Financing Solutions, and we are the leading provider in the United States for lines of credit for small nonprofits. And if you're interested in learning more about a line of credit for your nonprofit, please visit nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And the line of credit is a very popular product. We've been around for 12 years. We are very well known in that space. We are the leading company in that space right now in the United States. And it's a good thing to have as a good cash backup plan. Today we have a sponsor for today's podcast, and it's Araize, A-R-A-I-Z-E. Araize Fast Fund Online is a cloud-based system that seamlessly integrates nonprofit accounting software, fundraising, and single payroll in a single solution. So it's a great accounting software package specifically built for small nonprofits. If it's something that you're interested in, please feel free to visit their website at araize.com. Again, it's ARAIZE.com, or call Joe at 847-261-9605. I'm a big fan of software that's built specifically for an industry. It's a lot better than having a QuickBooks and trying to make QuickBooks work for your nonprofit. Today, I am very excited to be speaking with Yolanda F. Johnson from Women of Color in Fundraising and Philanthropy. And today's topic is going to be women's philanthropy and stewardship of donors of color. Yolanda is a leader in fundraising, philanthropy, and inclusion, equity, and diversity. She has developed training methods for boards and leadership groups in effective fundraising strategies and in racial and gender equity, in addition to successfully launching fundraising and marketing initiatives. Her philanthropic, I knew I was going to butcher that word. Her work includes counseling philanthropists on where to direct their resources, and through her own YFJ philanthropies, she personally gives back to causes supporting racial and gender equity and those with disabilities and the arts, including my disability, which is dyslexia. So that's why I struggle. So thanks for being patient, everybody. Yolanda, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about what this topic really entails, what it really means of women's philanthropy and stewardship of donors of color. Shed some light on it for us, please.
Well, I think that women's philanthropy and inclusion, equity, and diversity, we put the inclusion first because the theory of change around YFJ and Woke sister organization Allies in Action, is that the inclusion comes first. Without the I, you can't really have any of the other acronyms. And we have so many acronyms out there this day. I've been saying JEDI is my favorite right now. Justice matters, plus it's just a cool word. But I started to understand that women's philanthropy really comes under that DEI umbrella, because women have been otherized so often. There have been so many assumptions made about how women give and what investment should go into really stewarding women donors. And people haven't done it effectively to date, actually. And so we know that there are tens of millions of dollars left on the table every year because people do not know how to steward women donors. The other group that needs a particular lens through which you're going to see stewardship and cultivation is donors of color, similar to women donors, but of course different in many different ways. But they both fall under seeing philanthropy through that more inclusive lens, which is going to just work better for everyone when we get away from the transactional model of fundraising, where we're really illuminating the path for people and having relationships with people so that they're using their dollars to enact change, that it's real, that it's on a real people to people level, but also that it's not a knee jerk kind of reaction, getting back to the transaction, seeing people as checkbooks. And then if you see it that way, then you're going to see women and people of color sometimes differently if you don't have that inclusive mindset. So that's really, part of my life's work and what I'm here to talk about today.
So tell me what that mindset should be. Well, even before we go there, tell me what the mindset is or has been, and then let's talk about what the mindset should be.
The mindset has been that everything has been donor centric. All fundraising is about the donor, about cultivating the donor, about focusing on the donor and the donors in the typical philanthropic sphere. And one of the purposes of woke, Women of Color in Fundraising and Philanthropy, its nickname is woke, is to dismantle that archetype of what the philanthropist is, which is usually middle-aged or older white male or female, to understanding that it's completely redefined now. And really philanthropy is defined through generosity as well. And so women and people of color can look back and say, oh, my name doesn't need to be etched into a huge institution to be a philanthropist. And when fundraisers and people on the other side of the table see things that way and don't just go to donors, everything about the donor, and then again, looking at people as checkbooks, always with the focus of closing that gift. Fundraising is about money, don't get me wrong. So we understand that that's an important part of philanthropy, but there's so much more to it. And when you see things inclusively and see relationships with people who you're guiding down the path of getting the good work done through these dollars, it changes everything. And it's a much more enjoyable and more impactful experience for everybody involved. So typically you're seeing it all about the donor, but really not in the best of ways. You're making assumptions about who the donors are and what donors you should prioritize and focus upon. When it comes to women's philanthropy, some people make a lot of mistakes around focusing on, if it's a male-female relationship, focusing on the male. How many times I've had very high level, high net worth women say they went into a meeting and the fundraiser directed every question to her husband, when really it was a joint decision-making process, or she was really making the decision, but they were there together. And so when with donors of color, other assumptions can be made as well, that perhaps the money's not there. Expecting them, like going straight, like one of the sayings that I've become known for is don't treat your donors of color like a DEI ATM. So I just see the checkbook, I see the check, I see the gift. Oh, it's a donor of color. Let's talk to them about this particular thing, because of course they'd be interested in that, making assumptions, not realizing or remembering rather that they're human beings with gifts and talents and skills and interests, and that you should really learn about as people, while understanding and valuing them as a donor of color. So that's how we should be thinking, is individuals keeping good records. It's one of the biggest pain points of the whole industry right now in nonprofits, bad record keeping, not using the CRM to its fullest potential, not taking the 5 minutes to make a note after a meeting to understand who a person is, how meaningful it is to that donor if they just got a new dog and you remember that the next meeting and say, oh, you had a puppy last time, how's it going? That means you care. It's kind of a bedside manner, like you say about doctors in a way. Because my favorite doctor keeps great records. It seems like she knows everything about me every time I go to see her. She doesn't. She keeps good records and she stands outside the room and she reads them before she comes in. And I feel like I'm the only person in the world and that she cared enough to understand me as a person, first and foremost. And so I think that's the real strategy that fundraisers have to, and mindset that we have to be having.
You know, I'm 58 years old, and I think of myself as a progressive person, and I just can't believe we're still having this same conversation about, talking to the man in the room and not the women, and not I personally don't feel like I do that at all. Uh, you know, but I was brought up. My first manager when I started my first job was a woman, and I have two older sisters, and I never saw the difference between, honestly, a black person and a white person. And that just didn't dawn on me. And I'm just kind of shocked. We're still having the same conversation. I mean, it's naive of me not to think we're having crazy conversations about, terrible things that are happening in crime and, and it's just like, I just can't believe that people aren't treating people, and let's bring it down to non-political, and that is in raising money. It's
Mm-hmm.
all, it's all green. And so what do I care? I mean, why is this still happening? Why are people not in the nonprofit sector? Why are people not understanding people's interests, period?
Well, let's use what you just described in your own lived experience as a case study. So you're a white male, you're a middle-aged white
Well,
male,
sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
and so the danger sometimes in someone of your particular demographic, um, you're voicing it in a, a context of frustration a bit because your lived experience has been somewhat unique for someone who's of your demographic group. But sometimes what you just voiced is voiced in a very naive way that feeds into something that we've been seeing. So Allies in Action is a sister organization of Woke. I started it after hearing from so many white allies in 2020 asking, for help around what to do with the racial justice movement, how they could be involved. So we created it. It's based upon 4 pillars of education, legislation, inclusion, and action. And, sometimes we started to see a white fatigue start to take place around April 2021, advent of the vaccines. People wanted things to just be okay already. We'd gone through it. I made my gift. I went to my DER seminar. I served on a committee. I checked all my boxes, but box checking is performative. This is lifestyle work. This is human work. This is soul work. And so when this work happens at the speed of people. People change systems. You can't hit anybody over the head with it. You have to meet people where they are. But you have to be really careful about wanting things to just be okay already, because change will take about a century. And so we're fast tracking a lot of it. But sometimes I have to go back and remember that my mother still went to a segregated school for a few years. Not because it was still segregated, actually, but because it was late after Brown versus Board of Education, which reminds me of Juneteenth sometimes. The slaves were free, but they weren't free yet because the word hadn't really traveled. They hadn't implemented it yet. So, it was a hard pill to swallow, that change for some people. And it makes me say, wow, so this is the first generation. I'm the first generation really outside like the products of the civil rights movement and the products and the progresses of the civil rights movement. And change is going to continue to take time. It has to be real change, not performative change. So when you're talking about your lived experience, it's very interesting to me. This is a foreign concept to some extent for you because you had sisters. So great. You had other women in the home who were probably role models, who helped you understand some of the dynamics between males and females. I'm sure you saw them endure things also. They probably went through their own stuff and you were probably upset about that and an advocate for it. But the other key thing you said is that your first manager was a woman. So we have to look into leadership pipeline. Why is it that so many women are not in those C-suite positions? Women are the main participants in the workforce in the nonprofit sector, especially around fundraising and philanthropy. But why aren't they in those leadership positions adequately in comparison to men? So you had a woman that you saw in a position of leadership who helped to train you. That is not necessarily the typical lived experience of someone of your demographic group, especially at the time that you were coming up in the field. So you can count yourself, and I'm sure you do, quite fortunate to have had that experience, because many people haven't, and then it informs the way that they think and they don't think, actually.
Yeah, I mean, and there's much more to it than that. I went to a very diverse college that I loved. And so, I grew up, so this is in a study in Steve Halasnik, and what I'm trying to, I am by nature a natural salesperson.
Yeah.
And I started my first 9 years of my career in sales. And to me, it's fundraising is all about listening and asking good questions and getting to know your potential customer. And in this case, it's getting to know when you're talking about large gifts or fundraising. It's learning about other people, and so to me, that just seems a natural part of educating oneself. And so I'm just, but I like what you said before, and it changed my thought process in that you said it takes 100 years to make a significant change in, I don't know if people's perceptions or whatever. That when you said that, that changed things a lot for me. I'm like, oh, okay, so we're just not there yet, and we have made well, anyway, so I kind of want to get off of that a little bit, but so, and you already said, so we talked a little bit about people, the past and the present, and you alluded to some of the things about the future, about what we should be doing as to get fundraising and big donors and those type of things. Um, where where is the future headed for nonprofits as far as fundraising in relation to this topic?
Well, DEI is the future, and so those who do not embrace it will be left behind
Yep.
to a very large extent. But it shouldn't be otherized and put into a box. Again, I just want to reiterate this is lifestyle change. Just like you want to eat healthier and drink more water, you want to be more inclusive. You want to think differently so that you can be really intentional when you're doing that event. You could just go to the people that you always use as your vendors, or you could take the extra few hours and people power time and say, let's try to think of other artisans or people who are in this area of the sector to mix things up a little bit and make sure that we're supporting smaller businesses or women-owned business or people of color-owned businesses. It's those type of steps that are going to result in this becoming the norm and not being just we never want this work to be precious. And so I think the future is definitely a more inclusive lens. It's helping the white allies to understand that this wasn't just something that happened from 2020 to
Yeah.
2023 or so, that this is here to stay, and it has to stay somewhere in our hearts and in our minds. With fundraising, it's the head, the heart, the hand. Really understanding how people give and how you need to interact with a particular donor, in particular with women donors as well, how the statistics indicate that they give. Learn about that, embrace it, understand it. So those people, again, it's going to come down to the bottom line because everyone will start to understand that when you invest the time and understand the value in this work and in being more inclusive with fundraising and with philanthropy, you're going to see it start to come in on the bottom line. You're going to have more gifts. You're going to have greater gifts. You're going to have a different looking donor base. But it does take time to get there. And the time, it all starts now. And then you plant the seeds, you continue to work forward with it. And I think we're going to see a lot of progress as far as that's concerned. Will there be bumps in the road? Yes, there already have been. But I mean, look at the amount of money that was pledged around racial justice from 2020 to now, and actually how much has been realized is a huge disparity. There are a lot of promises made that still need to be fulfilled, and I think that's going to happen over time as people again reimagine the fundraising sector and the nonprofit sector in a different kind of way.
You think the Melinda Gates, the woman from Amazon? I'm sorry, I don't know her name.
Mackenzie Scott.
Yeah, Mackenzie Scott. Thank you. I just forgot her name. Mackenzie Scott. Do you think that they have opened this discussion and taught us a lot of different things, or was it always there and they're just now kind of the face of this movement?
I think it's some of both. I think that those two particular examples, those women have been powerful representatives for women's philanthropy and for diverse philanthropy in different ways, the way that they've given. Um, And I also think that women have been here all the time in different capacities, just like donors of color have been here all the time. Just like when I speak to women of color and they don't think that their family has been philanthropic because they weren't making large gifts. Well, they were giving to the church, they were giving their tithes, they were giving their time, they were building up their communities. They've always been philanthropic. So redefining that, I think, is of utmost importance. So I think we've been here all along, just need to be tapped into and cultivated and stewarded and appreciated in the proper way. But it is interesting that it took the billionaires to really make that impact and get everyone's attention on this level. But women have been out there for a very long time being philanthropic and moving that needle forward.
Well, keep in mind, it's a movement. I mean, if you look back into the original huge, what created nonprofit giving, John D. Rockefeller, from, Standard Oil, started the whole idea of giving large, huge donations from families. And then the Vanderbilts came. So that was a movement in itself. And so maybe that's why Melinda Gates and others are all starting this movement now that we're seeing to tap into uh, various other groups other than white males for big donations. So let's say you're running you're an executive director. Your nonprofit's $5 million in revenue, and you really kind of want to start you really want to get bigger donors to drive your fundraising. Tell me a little bit about, how would you use the discussion that we had today so far about running a major donor program?
Well, successful major donor programs are all about strategy. And I'm a strategist. It's part of what my company does. So you're really going to look at every aspect. You're going to do an audit, and you have to be honest about where you are and who you are and how you're fulfilling your mission and who you have in every level of leadership and who's there. What is the reality of your situation? And then you can build out strategy from there. You can't just build it as a knee-jerk reaction or just
Mm.
because you think that you need to have it. It has to be very particular to you and to your organization. One of the most important questions that I've asked clients in the past is, what would the nonprofit sector, and this is from an old friend and brilliant consultant named Pi Isis, um, what would the sector look like if your organization didn't exist? And you start there and you say, wow, so we are special. Why are you? What's the strategy to helping other people understand, to telling that story, to fulfilling your mission, and then to make it compelling, and then to make it not transactional, but to guide these people and shine through your organization's mission the light on the path to the work that you're accomplishing and getting other like-minded people with the resources behind it in order to grow your giving program.
And it really is a full-time job, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
I
Yes,
mean,
indeed.
I don't mean to be so coy with that, but the idea is, a lot of executive directors who are smaller nonprofits, they all know they're doing everything. And when you start switching into going from, well, we have this fundraising campaign that we do once a year, and that's our major fundraising, and then you start saying, okay, now I want to make a switch to really cultivating big donors. It's a full-time job, and it's a big mindset change from, you know, usually what a smaller an organization that's smaller is doing already. Have you seen, am I right in saying that it's a big mindset change?
According to your organization's strategy, but you have to diversify the way that you're seeing everything in every way. And I mean, How much can you accomplish? What do your prospects look like? What does your donor base and your current pool of donors look like? That's the audit. What is your reality right now? And yes, all of this is a full-time job. And that's why, recently I have become so appreciative of the fact that I was a generalist. When I was in the thick of it and running a small shop and having to know how to do everything, but now I'm like, I know how to do everything, on some
Yeah.
level. And so I'm really grateful for that. So all of you people out there who might be running a small shop or, be leading a small organization, take heart, because you really are developing some really important skill sets out there, being able to wear those different hats. But that being said, we have to be honest and understand that a lot of time and focus needs to go into it when you're building a major gift program. And you have to be ready for it, and you have to be able to prioritize what's going to work best for your organization right now. What do you have in front of you? What will your strategy be? And if it is on growing the donor base, then you're going to need to invest in prospecting. So just start at where you are realistically, and that will inform your strategy moving forward. But yes, building a fundraising program, building a major gift program, a successful one, is going to take a lot of someone's time. And so you also have to think of what does that look like for you? Do you need to hire a person? What percentage of the executive director's time is going to be spent on that and on closing those gifts? And then you have to look at your board. Who's there and how can they play a role in all of this, and other leadership entities? So, but it all starts with, who are you? Where are you right now?
So, are you suggesting that, that the way I'm articulating that, it sounds defensive, but I don't mean it that way. You're an executive director, smaller nonprofit, and you're buying into what we're talking about today. Okay. And what we're talking about today is to look for other avenues of big donors than the past. So in that vein, is what you're saying today is just be open-minded when you talk to people, find out about them, understand what their past has been like, what other people in their situation might have been like? Or are you suggesting when you come up with a strategy that you purposely go after women, people of color, so on and so forth? Is there a strategy here, is what I'm asking?
Of course. And it's strategic in the sense of intentionality. So we can use those words interchangeably. It's opening yourself up to understanding and valuing the donors from those two particular groups. Really just being inclusive across the board, actually, but we're talking about these particular groups today. And developing a very intentional plan. If this is not your reality right now, if you do that audit and where you are and who you are does not embrace women donors and donors of color, to be very intentional, to think about how can we do that better.
I'm assuming that your nonprofit has to gear itself toward the interests of women and people of color, and so on and so forth, all the different segments. If you are, like, an example would be, if you're an organization that helps men understand prostate cancer better, that probably isn't the best route to go with women. I mean, I can see where it might, if your husband had died of prostate cancer, but may not be the best strategy. Is that fair to say?
I think that's incredibly unfair to say, actually.
Okay.
I think that it's those types of assumptions that feed into the issues that are at play. And let me just go a little further on that. So you actually just picked up on the first reason why, because we're all human beings, and someone in your life may have been touched by that. For me, if it was a prostate cancer organization, it would be my grandfather and
Yeah.
some other family members who
And
I
my
love
father too.
dearly,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
I'm a woman, I'm a Black woman, you're a white male, and it means something to both of us. And so that fundraiser has to understand that when you limit yourself, then you're limiting your fundraising potential and you're not being inclusive in your thinking. Um, so yeah, it could be. I happen to fit into two of those categories, a woman and a person of color, and it would matter to me, and I would be willing to hear your pitch to see what's going on and what your programming is doing and your impact to possibly make a gift. But if you make that assumption that it's a woman and a Black woman, or just the woman part, and therefore it's probably not good to include that person in my strategy, you've shot yourself in the proverbial foot.
Yeah, well, my problem with that is this. I mean, I'm not talking about someone's sitting in front of me, and you have a woman and you have a man. I'm going to, of course, I would treat them both the same in regards to big donors, but I'm talking about like high probability of marketing. So, I'm trying to think of the best scenario, but when you're marketing, let's say you're creating a list that you're going to send out a mailer to. Let's just keep it simple, right? Old school mailer, right? Um, and someone, a list broker comes up to you and says, okay, you know, this is what the segmentation is going to look like. And I go and I already look at the research that we've done in the past, and I see that 95% of our donors are male and 5% are women. Okay. And yes, I could say as well, maybe my past strategy had lend itself in that direction, right? I could say, oh, well, let me question that, right? Um, but when you talk about marketing, and I'm trying to go for the highest probability that the person who's going to open up that mailer is going to donate or call us or join our fundraising event. And I already know that 95% of our donors are male. Am I going to say to the list broker, I need 50-50. I need 50% female and 50% male. Now, the only argument that I would have here is maybe those 50% of those females have not been contacted enough. And so they're not being they're not getting inundated by organizations such as myself that I'm, the prostate cancer research, whatever it is. Does that make sense to you, where you would want to make some of those assumptions in marketing?
I still think that they're bad assumptions, because
Mm.
when you do that audit of the organization and you notice, if the organization notices that 95% of its donor base is male, I don't really know of a circumstance under which that would be a natural thing.
Hmm.
Unless it's a gender-based organization that's only for males. So outside of that, that's the inclusive lens. And that's the strategy and the intentionality. Do you want to change that? Because you're still leaving money on the table for the me's of the world who would give to you. But have you come up with an approach that says the universality of cancer and of prostate cancer, it impacts all of us and someone that we love? And, to make sure to do that outreach, that's only smart, and it's thinking more inclusively. Or you could stay in that box and only ever get those male donors and miss out on the tens of millions of dollars that women and other donors are giving each year. That's the step that has to be taken. That's the intentionality of it all.
So I really like what you said, and that is, if you do your research and you look at your donor base, and in this case, if 95% of if it's male donors, you have to at that point say, I'm doing something wrong. It
There's
should not
probably an
be.
issue.
Yeah. It's like there's definitely an area of opportunity that I'm missing here, and there's you could throw everything away and really start from scratch and say, this is a reflection of poor marketing. In essence, that there's money being left on the table, to put it bluntly, because I'm not going after other segments as well. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think that's entirely fair. And there's a beauty to it, right? This is something that impacts a lot of different people on a lot of different levels. Do you think that there aren't a lot of male donors to breast cancer charities? Do they not have mothers and sisters and wives
Of course.
and
No,
daughters
yeah.
who have been impacted by that? So I just think we have to
Yeah.
be really careful and really thoughtful about it. There may be some exceptional circumstances, but for the most part, that's broadening the lens and therefore broadening your fundraising potential.
Okay. All right. We have like a couple of minutes left. I'd like to give you a last word. This was an uncomfortable conversation for me because I think I'm a little out of touch with, what you're talking about. Um, I I just joined another new board, which I'm helping them raise funds, and we're going through all these steps now. So what I learned from Yolanda is really going to be really helpful for me in helping guide this new nonprofit I'm a part of. But so give us a few of your last thoughts on this topic.
Well, first, I want to say that this is good discomfort. Consider it your growing pains. In
Mhm.
this space, whenever that sort of thing happens, it's just that your mind's maybe broadening and things are shifting and it doesn't feel quite right just yet, but that's wonderful because you're heading totally in the right direction. And you even have an actionable step. So these are the things that I would leave people with is to really put this work top of mind. We always have to find our role in it. What you just did in a split second is know that you have a new leadership opportunity on a nonprofit board where you can take this and use it. That's powerful. So again, audit yourselves. Where are you right now? How can you think more inclusively? And in particular, be thinking about gender and about donors of color and women donors because there's so much there to really dig into and ways to grow. And then find an actionable step. Be intentional about it, whatever that means. It may be a leadership role. It may be within your organization, looking at your board matrix and seeing who's there and who needs to be there in order to really move this work forward, looking at your staff. Um, do your audit. Understand who you are and where you are with thinking more inclusively about philanthropy. That'll be your starting step. And then make a plan for another actionable step. Bring like minded people together to understand the importance of this and to make sure that it stays top of mind and understand that it is not just a reaction, it's not a performative uh, movement that's a short term type of thing. This is people changing systems. This is real change that's going to change the fabric of our entire sector in the most wonderful of ways and will open us up to so many other opportunities, both from the bottom line with fundraising, but also as individuals and as human beings. So I think that's what I would leave you with today.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add my 2 cents too, and that is question what you've done in the past. And I think that fits well into what Yolanda's saying as well. So it was a great podcast today. I really, really learned a lot. I mean, this is like my 350th episode, and I don't think I learned more. I think I learned more today than I have in any of the other past episodes today. It makes me realize how
Thank
a little
you.
bit not a little bit naive I am. So I'd like to thank so very much Yolanda F. Johnson from Women of Color in Fundraising and Philanthropy for coming on to today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And if you like today's podcast, please give us a 5-star review on your podcasting app because it really helps us get a word out. The Nonprofit MBA podcast is now in the top 5% of podcasts in the nonprofit space. And I thank you for that. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofits, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Yolanda, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
They can find me on LinkedIn and they also can visit a few different websites. I don't know. Do you have a way that we can share this afterwards with everyone as well?
Oh, of course, it'll be in the show notes and everything like that.
Yes.
So, yeah, your website.
YFJ. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you finish. Go ahead.
So just yfj-consulting.com is where you can find out all about me. And with Woke, it's www.woc-fp is in fundraising and philanthropy.com as well.
Yep. So it's
Yes.
woc-fp.com. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, Yolanda, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. This has been a really, I think, productive conversation. And stay in touch. Let me know how this journey is going. Let me know if we can be helpful.
Sounds good. So, just to wrap it up for everybody, I want to thank our listeners. I always do. You know, you guys are out there every single day making the world a better place. I thank you for doing that. You guys are really, doing all the hard work. But I know both Yolanda and we're both trying to do our part too in making the world a better place. But you're out there every single day, and I just want to remind you all that you should take good care of yourself. You're no good to your family. You're no good to your organization, your cause, if you don't take good care of yourself first. And of course, that means exercising, eating right, getting some free time for yourself. And I know it's hard in today's world to try to do that, but that's important. So everybody have a fantastic day. It was a really good topic. I really enjoyed learning a lot today about it. And I wish you all a great day.